You are living on a rock hurtling through space at 67,000 miles per hour. On this rock, you have approximately 80 years. In those 80 years, you are expected to figure out what you are, why you are here, and what this experience is asking of you. Nobody gives you a map. Most people never look at this question directly. It's too large, so they look down, at the screen, at the next task, and the question waits. Carl Jung spent his entire life looking at it directly, and what he found was a framework for understanding the game of Earth that no conventional map provides. Today we go into that. Stay until the end. 1. What the game of Earth actually is. Before anything else, we have to be honest about what kind of game this is. Because most people are playing it as though it is a game of accumulation. Accumulate enough: money, status, experience, relationships, achievements, possessions, and something will be satisfied. The accumulation game has a seductive logic. More always seems like it should be better. The next level always seems like it might be the one that finally delivers what the previous ones didn't. Jung watched people play this game for their entire lives, and he observed, with clinical precision, what it produces. Not satisfaction, adaptation. The human capacity to adapt to any level of accumulation, to absorb any achievement, any acquisition, any external improvement, and return, within a surprisingly short time, to the same baseline of interior experience. The promotion feels extraordinary for 3 weeks. The house feels like arrival for 3 months. The relationship feels like completion for a year. And then it is simply the job, the house, the relationship, the new baseline, the new normal. And the interior experience returns to whatever it was before. This is not a failure of gratitude or discipline or psychological health. It is the fundamental structure of consciousness encountering the external world. The external world cannot produce lasting interior transformation. Only the interior work can produce lasting interior transformation. Jung called this the most important discovery of his clinical career. The game of Earth is not an external game. It was never an external game. It is an interior one, played in the specific, private, ungovernable territory of what you are, as a conscious being, on this earth, in this life. 2. Why you were born confused, and why that confusion is the beginning. Jung made an observation that initially sounds strange. He said that the confusion most people feel about their life, the sense of not quite knowing what they are for, what they truly want, what the point of the whole thing is not a problem to be solved. It is the starting condition of the game, and it is there for a reason. Because if you arrived with complete clarity, if your purpose was obvious, your path was clear, your values were settled before you had lived enough to test them, you would not need to become anything. You would simply execute a program that was already written. The confusion, the genuine, uncomfortable, often painful uncertainty about who you are and what you are here to do, is the pressure that drives the process Jung called individuation. The process of becoming who you actually are. Not who you were told to be, not who the group needs you to be. Who you actually, fundamentally, irreducibly are. Beneath every layer of conditioning, performance, and inherited expectation. This process requires the confusion as its fuel. The person who arrives with all the answers has nothing to discover. The person who arrives with the question, "What am I? What is this for? What does this life want from me?" has everything available. The confusion is not the enemy of the game. It is the invitation to begin playing it seriously. 3. The Earth itself as teacher. Jung believed something that modern psychology has largely forgotten. That the Earth, the physical, material, natural world, is not simply the backdrop against which human life happens. It is a participant, not in a mystical sense, in a deeply psychological one. The human psyche, as Jung understood it, did not develop in isolation. It developed in relationship, across hundreds of thousands of years, with the rhythms, the cycles, the forces, and the creatures of the natural world. The seasons, the day and night, the ocean and the mountain, the predator and the storm. These were not external circumstances that ancient humanity simply endured. They were the original teachers of the psyche, the forces against which human consciousness first defined itself, the mirror in which the interior life first became visible. And Jung observed, in his clinical work and in his study of mythology across every culture, that the archetypes of the collective unconscious are not abstract. They are deeply embedded in the natural world. The Great Mother is not simply a symbol. She is the earth itself, generative, sustaining, and devouring. The hero is not simply a story pattern. He is the human capacity to face the unknown, the forest, the ocean, the darkness, and return transformed. The trickster, the shadow, the wise old man. All of them have their counterparts in the natural world that shaped them. What this means for the game of Earth is specific and practical. The person who lives entirely in constructed environments, in buildings, in screens, in the artificial rhythms of modern life, is playing the game with a significant disadvantage. They have cut themselves off from the original teacher, from the mirror that showed the first human beings who they were and what they were capable of. The Earth, attended to honestly, walked in, sat with, genuinely encountered rather than merely passed through, speaks a language that the psyche was built to receive, not metaphorically. In the specific, felt experience of returning to the original scale of things. The scale at which the human being is neither the center nor the problem. Simply, a conscious creature, briefly present, on an ancient and indifferent and extraordinarily beautiful rock. 4. The 4 forces every player must face. Jung mapped the interior landscape with the precision of a cartographer. And in that mapping, he identified 4 forces that every human being, regardless of culture, era, or circumstance, must eventually encounter and integrate to play the game of Earth at its deepest level. The first force, the shadow. Everything you have decided you are not. Every quality suppressed, denied, projected outward because it was incompatible with the self you constructed. The anger that was not allowed, the fear that was mocked, the desire that was shamed, the ambition that was called selfish, the tenderness that was called weakness. All of it, alive, accumulated, operating from below the level of your awareness. The shadow is not evil. It is simply the part of you that hasn't been given permission to exist consciously. And what is not given conscious permission does not disappear. It operates unconsciously, shaping decisions you think you are making freely, driving reactions you believe you are choosing, creating the patterns you cannot understand and cannot change because you cannot see what is producing them. Facing the shadow is not comfortable, but it is the move that changes the game more than any other, because you cannot be free of what you cannot see, and you cannot see what you refuse to look at. The second force, the anima and animus. In every person, Jung observed, there is an interior figure of the opposite. In a man, the anima, the feminine within, the capacity for feeling, for relatedness, for intuition, for the kind of receptive intelligence that the masculine conscious identity often suppresses in the process of becoming what it believes a man should be. In a woman, the animus, the masculine within, the capacity for direction, for assertion, for the kind of focused, penetrating clarity that the feminine conscious identity sometimes suppresses in the process of becoming what it believes a woman should be. When this interior figure is unconscious, when it has never been encountered directly, it operates through projection. You see it in another person, fall in love with it, try to possess it through relationship, and wonder, when the relationship inevitably fails to contain what you were seeking, why the thing you were looking for was never quite there. Because it was never in the other person. It was always in you. Integrating the anima or animus is the work of finding, in yourself, the qualities your conscious identity has assigned to the opposite sex, and bringing them into conscious relationship. This is not a small task, but it is one of the central moves of the game. The third force, the self. Not the ego, not the persona, not the daily managing, socially performing, consciously aware self. The self, capital S, is Jung's term for the organizing center of the total psyche, the deep intelligence that encompasses both conscious and unconscious. The part of you that knows with extraordinary precision what your life is trying to become, even when your conscious mind has no idea. It speaks through dreams, through the irrational pull toward certain things, through the symptoms that appear when its direction is consistently ignored, through the synchronicities that cluster around moments of genuine inner engagement. The game of Earth, at its deepest level, is the development of a conscious relationship with this self. The ego learning to listen to something larger than itself. The small self learning to serve something it did not create and cannot control. This is what every serious spiritual tradition has been pointing at, in different language, across all of human history. Jung simply mapped it psychologically. The fourth force, mortality. Jung believed that the conscious relationship with death, not the avoidance of the thought, but the genuine, honest, ongoing encounter with the fact of your own finitude, is one of the most powerful developmental forces available to a human being. Most people spend enormous energy avoiding this encounter. The screen, the noise, the busyness, all of it serves, among other functions, as insulation against the awareness that this is temporary, that you will not be here indefinitely, that the time available for the game is finite and is running. But Jung observed that the people who had genuinely integrated the awareness of mortality, who had sat with the fact of their own death and allowed it to do what it does when honestly faced, were, paradoxically, the most alive. Because mortality, honestly encountered, performs a clarifying function that nothing else can replicate. It burns away the unimportant. With devastating efficiency, it reveals which of the many things competing for your attention actually matter, and which are simply filling the time. The person who knows they are going to die really knows it, in the felt sense, not just as an intellectual acknowledgement, cannot waste their life in the same way. The urgency is not anxious, it is clarifying. This is the time. This is the life. What does it actually want from you? 5. The levels of the game. Like every serious game, the game of Earth has levels. Not fixed, not clean, not sequential in the orderly way a diagram would suggest, but recognizable, in retrospect, and sometimes in the midst of them. Level 1. The received life. The life given to you by circumstance, by family, by culture. The beliefs, the values, the goals, the identity, all largely inherited, lived with genuine effort and genuine investment, but not yet genuinely chosen. Most people spend their entire lives here, not because they are incapable of more, because the received life is functional. It provides structure, belonging, direction, and the next level requires something the received life does not ask for: the willingness to question what you have been given. Level 2. The crisis. The moment the received life stops working. Not necessarily a dramatic external crisis, though sometimes it is. Often something quieter, an achievement that feels hollow, a relationship that reveals something about you that the received identity cannot absorb, a grief that strips away the performance and leaves something raw and unmanageable underneath. Jung called this the confrontation with the unconscious, the moment the deeper layers of the psyche, long suppressed by the energy required to maintain the received life, push through. This level is uncomfortable by design. The crisis is not punishment, it is invitation. The invitation to begin playing the game consciously, rather than simply executing the program you were given. Level 3. The Descent. The genuine encounter with the interior. Shadow. Anima or animus. The unlived life. The suppressed qualities. The unasked questions. The territory most people spend their entire lives carefully, expertly avoiding. The descent is not pleasant, but it is where the real game begins. Because it is only by going into the depths that you find what the depths contain. And what they contain, Jung was insistent about this, across decades of clinical work, is not primarily darkness. It is richness, complexity, creativity, the specific, unmistakable quality of a psyche that has been allowed to be fully itself. Level 4. The Integration. The long, non-linear, deeply personal work of bringing it all together. Shadow integrated. Persona worn consciously, rather than inhabited unconsciously. Self listened to. Mortality held with honesty. This level has no completion point. It is the work of a lifetime, which is exactly what makes it worthy of one. 6. The moves that matter. 7 moves, not techniques. The actual structure of how the game advances. Move 1. Stop pretending you know what you want. Most people are pursuing goals they inherited rather than chose. The first real move in the game is the honest admission, to yourself, before anyone else, of the difference between what you have been told to want and what you actually want. The gap between these two things is where the real game begins. Move 2. Follow the thing that won't leave you alone. Not the passion that sounds impressive. Not the interest that's currently trending. The thing that keeps returning. The question that persists through every attempt to move past it. The pull that doesn't have a good rational justification, but has been present for years. Jung's clinical experience was consistent. These persistent pulls are not random. They are the self-indicating direction. Move 3. Find what you most judge in others and sit with it. The quality that produces your strongest, most irrational reaction, the one that feels disproportionate, the one you cannot simply observe and release, is almost always pointing at something unintegrated in your shadow. Not as a comfortable idea, as a genuine investigation. What do I carry that I am seeing in them? Move 4. Spend time in genuine nature without a screen. Not as recreation, as encounter. The original scale, the original mirror, the place where the psyche was formed, and where, in honest encounter, it still recognizes something it needs. Move 5. Let the difficult relationship teach you. Not end it, not manage it. Let it teach you. The relationship that keeps triggering the same reaction is not bad luck. It is the game presenting the same material until you engage with it honestly. Move 6. Write to yourself without an audience. The journal that no one will read. The letter you will never send. The honest account of where you actually are. The act of writing, without performance, without curation, creates a dialogue between the conscious and the unconscious that nothing else quite replicates. Move 7. Hold your mortality without immediately moving away from it. 10 minutes, once a week, perhaps more. The honest encounter with the fact that this is finite, that the time is running, that the question of what this life wants from you is not hypothetical or distant. It is here, now, asking. And your answer, given in how you spend the irreplaceable days, is the only answer that matters.